What do you mean?
I said, why isn't he?
Because he does that through attorneys, and I know that you know, because you've been in the business a long time, that people who are charged with crimes have a right to remain silent, and they don't have an obligation to prove up their innocence. It's the people who are charging them that have an obligation to prove beyond a reasonable doubt their guilt. And if every time Mr. Cosby opens up his mouth, he gets sued by another person with false allegations who's looking to make some money, then it becomes risky to say anything at all. So under the good advice of counsel, he's letting me do the talking for him, and that's why I'm here tonight.
In this criminal complaint, which quotes this deposition, it's Bill Cosby who tells police that he went to his room, he came down with pills for Andrea Constand to take, and that he touched her bare breasts and her private parts. He recounts a phone call that he had with Andrea Constand's mother where he says, I think I gave the victim some pills. And he told Mrs. Constant that he touched the victim's breasts and vagina, but guaranteed her that there was no penile penetration. So this idea of giving a woman pills and then having sexual contact with her, this is his idea of a consensual sexual experience.
Right, but you didn't say what the pills were, and I understand that people want them to be Quaaludes because in another part of the deposition that wasn't released.
Don't put words in my mouth. He says Benadryl here. I did not say Quaaludes.
These are the words coming out of my mouth.
Okay.
I said people, not you, want for those to be Quaaludes and are trying to conflate issues, but what the deposition revealed, the parts that are already out there that I can actually talk about because I'm still constrained by a confidentiality agreement, says that it was Sustanex and that the complainant in this case took it willingly after complaining of being unable to sleep and complaining of pain to the head. So the incident that you described, the actions that you described from the deposition, I know you know are not criminal. So the fact that someone took some medication that is legal and over the counter.
You're not. Right. You said that I know that is
consensual sexual contact is not illegal.
You said that I know it's not consensual. I did not say that.
Because you're an experienced reporter. You know what you just described.
No, I'm asking you if giving pills, which he asserts at different points are different kinds of things, whether that is consensual. He also did testify in that deposition that he obtained 7 prescriptions for Quaaludes to give to other people, not to take himself. That's something that he considers acceptable.
That's something that was going on in the 70s, and this is an allegation about 2004.
Sure. Right. But doesn't something that he did in the 70s show that he considers it acceptable?
Well, I don't know. Do people do things 40 years earlier that they consider acceptable and then no longer consider them acceptable when it's 40 years later? Certainly, I've done things 30 years ago. I'm just 45 now, so when I was a young teen or a young adult, that I wouldn't consider acceptable behavior for someone of my age, and I'd like to think that the American people who are watching would feel the same way. But where Quaaludes are concerned, that's not even a substance that was available on market 40 years later. So the fact that he willingly was deposed and gave that information has nothing to do with what even this complainant said herself. It's not just his testimony, it's hers. And her testimony was not that she was slipped a drug. Her testimony was not that she was forced to take anything. Her testimony was not that she was forced to
she thought it was herbal.
Don't spin it. It had no effect. So we went to hot sauce. Open. We've been having a lot of problems. It'll stay in the bathroom, so it's handy when we need it.
Oh my gosh. All right, Jessica Bigley videotaped herself attempting to control her defiant child, all part of a plea to Dr. Phil for some help. She was convicted of child abuse. Then the judge suspended the sentence of 180 days in jail and a $2,500 fine.
Nothing I've done.
The crime here of child abuse was not done on a lark. It was not a spur-of-the-moment thing. It's something that the evidence indicates you've been thinking about for 2 years. You just weren't quite sure how to do it.
All right, let's see what Tamara Holder thinks about this. She's a criminal defense attorney, and she joins me now. This is bizarre. You go first, Tamara. What do you think?
I think that this sentence that she was found guilty of child abuse is absolutely ridiculous. Here is a mother who was trying to discipline her child. There's no sign of physical abuse. It's not like the kid was going to school with bruises on his legs or anything like that. It's the same thing as when my parents washed my mouth out with soap. I think that the 3 years probation and a jail sentence that, even though it was staged, if she violates anything, she'll be sent to jail, is really harsh, and it sets a terrible precedent.
You know, but here's what I think. When you take a step back and you look at this situation, what really caught my eye in this story was a quote from her husband, who's an Anchorage police officer. He said, "We just ended up getting wrapped up in television, and we had no idea where it would end up." You know, so that's what I see here. I see a family who, you know, maybe thought it would be great to get on Dr. Phil, and they're having some troubles disciplining. You know, God bless them. They have adopted children. They have children of their own. They have children with special needs. They got a lot going on in that house. But I'm wondering if the motivation wasn't, you know, sort of a moment on TV, and does that not say something about our whole society and the kind of stuff that we would do to get on TV?
Sure. You know, you think about the balloon boy a couple of years ago. That's kind of the same thing. Here's a dad whose kid hopped in a balloon that went flying off into you know, across Colorado. It's the same kind of thing. People want their 15 minutes of fame, but she was convicted of child abuse. So now if somebody hears at the school that a kid was, you know, disciplined in a certain way, does the teacher now have a duty to report that kid or those parents to Department of Family Services?
But you know what the school is? They're already saying that this child got picked on at school, not because of that, but because his mother was on TV making him drink hot sauce. So, you know, you may say that this child has not suffered any physical bruises, but I say there's an issue here. When this family is going to these lengths to get on television, obviously they're having some problem disciplining their child. I know that that can be a very difficult situation, but to go to these lengths to, you know, I mean, who puts hot sauce down a child's mouth? And I think this judge looked at the situation and said, I'm going to give you 180 days and $2,500 fine, and then he scrapped both of them. So he's trying to make a point with her that they need to get their priorities straight, perhaps, and then he gave her none of that.
But Martha, people discipline their children so differently. One of my cousins used to just sit in timeout, and he was terrible. He was a little hellion. Everybody does things different to their children, and I don't think it's the parent or the government who should decide what's wrong or right unless there's clear abuse. You know, kids go to school every day hungry because their parents are too lazy to feed them.
I hear you, and I don't think that, you know, anybody wants to see this kind of stuff in court. There are a lot better things that could be happening in court, but unfortunately these people put themselves into the public forum, and that's how they ended up in court. So this is a somewhat unusual case, but, you know, hot sauce and cold showers seems to me, it doesn't look like it's working, like it's getting anybody anywhere. So I think this judge basically made a judgment about the family needs to take a look at how things are being handled and maybe think twice about doing that the next time. So, you know, Tamara, you know, we're all doing the best we can.
I don't have kids,
right?
so.
Thank you very much, Tamara Holder. We'll see you soon.
After a while, the hot sauce just dissolves into your mouth, and it really doesn't taste like much.
Hot sauce.
After a while. Jenna Lee's coming up next. Jenna Lee's. How you doing, Saucy? Good morning.
I'm doing.
We found out if you are on the second team, you are immediately treated the way any of us outside of the NFL would be treated if we were accused of such charges.
Well, in fact, Chris Rainey he's on the practice squad. When the media began to question the Arizona Cardinals head coach about him and his past domestic violence, he was cut within an hour. Now, they tried to explain he was cut down. He wasn't recently arrested. He was not. Again, I'm not excusing anything that he did, but after being questioned, within 1 hour, he was cut from the practice squad. But Joe, you know, also very interesting. 20 minutes ago, I was watching ESPN. They were showing highlights of U.S. women's soccer team and lauding Hope Solo. She goes on trial in November for assaulting her sister, assaulting her nephew. But it's interesting, there was no mention about that. So if domestic violence is a national issue, should we not be questioning why Hope Solo is still playing on the women's soccer team, and Nike dropped Adrian Peterson, has said nothing about Hope Solo? So it's interesting how we have different views about domestic violence.
I'm a little skeptical about that. Look, that's one example of a woman beating another woman, with countless examples of men beating women.
No, Caddy.
Different now. Of course.
1 second.
In this instance, Hope Solo should have been had the same kind of retribution that the men are having. But let's not try and use that as an example to suggest that women are as guilty of domestic violence against their partners as men are, because it is overwhelmingly men.
Katie, I know that.
Well, let Roland talk. Roland?
I've been covering this issue. I've had to deal with domestic violence in my own family, taking in 2 young girls. So I am never silent on this. But I'm making the point that if we're saying domestic violence is a national issue, and it is, we must be vigilant across the board. The same thing with Alabama Judge Mark Fuller. What I'm saying is we've spent a lot of attention focused on the NFL, but when there are other cases, it's sort of a different standard. There should be one standard.
We want to talk about the Alabama judge, Claire McCaskill. Claire McCaskill brought this judge up a couple of days ago, and I wanted to get you on to talk a little bit more about that. We're going to be doing that in the blocks coming up, because that, Mika, that will be one thing that could come out of this horrible episode in the NFL if everybody that has been accused and shown to have beaten their wives or their children, you know, feel the hot glare.
I think a month ago this Dwyer story would have been dealt with differently. I really do.
Yeah.
Now it's like
Next. I hope not. I wish JV and Elvis didn't lose their job or Imus. It's funny. This is the thing. I don't know her, but I'm assuming that she has nothing to do with funny. So I'm gonna speak as the expert on funny. Funny people should just be left to trying to be funny.
What if they're not funny?
Then you made a mistake. But how many times has how many unfunny rape jokes lead to rape? Like,
I don't know how many jokes about rape there are.
There's a lot. But your world is not funny. Your world is next on the big story. My world is people trying to be funny.
Well, I mean, you think it's okay to try to make jokes about rape?
I'm diabetic. I make fun of that. I'm a victim. I might lose a toe. But I'm trying to make fun of. I'm trying to make fun of anything I think I can make fun of.
Sonia?
You know, what's happening now is the marketplace is deciding what's appropriate or what's not appropriate. I think the nation is just tired. There's a new mood in the nation.
What nation?
The nation. You know what? We're tired of things that are just
Is this the nation, this paper, and you? I'm not the nation. I'm just speaking for me and funny. You're speaking for the nation, or are you speaking for...
Yeah, you know why? Because I remember 6 years ago doing something against Anthony Openy because they were just so outrageous, and their violent images that they put out to women was just uncalled for. And now I think people...
You think they were trying to be funny?
I think now people in this country
think they were trying to be funny?
Tired. You know what? I don't care if they're trying to be funny.
That's what I'm saying. Why are you in that business?
I've been to your show once, and it wasn't very funny being a woman.
It was hilarious.
Show, when you talked about...
That's why she doesn't like me. I was in the paper with her, and the joke is hilarious, called The Angry Pirate. And the lady who wrote it in her outrage didn't even know what it meant, and anybody who read it laughed, because they know what funny... You're not living in the context of funny. You're living in the context of fire.